Education and Board of Regents. Glad to see everyone here. We will begin with our agenda. Roll call, please.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Brophy is not in attendance. Mr. Castillo?
Here.
Dr. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Ellis? Is here. I saw her. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Ms. Holloway?
Here.
Mr. Millery?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here.
Ms. Orange Jones?
Here.
Mr. Rock?
Here.
Ms. Bochet?
Here. Okay, Regent David,
Here.
Regent Ewing is not here, Regent Finley is not here, Regent Levy,
Here.
Regent May, not here, Regent McDonald,
Here.
Regent Mayer,
Present.
Regent Perez,
Here.
Regent Pryor,
Here.
Regent Seal,
Here.
Regent Solomon,
Here.
Regent Sterling,
Here.
Regent Temple, Regent Pedrine,
Present.
Regent Weil,
Here.
Regent Williams Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item, please. Approval of minutes. I have a motion. Mr. Garvey, second. By Mr. Rock. Thank you. Any objection? Motion carried. Next item for consideration is 4.1. Please bear with me because I have no support aside from Beth. She's sitting right here.
No, I feel so inadequate right now. Someone to tell me what to do right now.
Items for consideration, 4.1. I'll read 4.1 and I'll let Blake read 4.2 next. How about that? We can do joint here. 4.1, consideration of an update report from the Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity. Motion, please. Dr. Davis, I need someone from Board of Regents.
Second.
There we go, got three of them. Okay, Sonia? Seconded. And Dr. Bromley?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, President Holloway. This first presentation truly is a joint effort between the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education as well as the Board of Regents. Commissioner Reed and I recognized specifically over the course of the year the need that we have throughout our state to further support broadband infrastructure. And in understanding that, when funds were available through the governor's office from federal stimulus dollars, the two of us together made connection with the governor and passed to him the idea of using some of those initial dollars to fund the state's first Office of Broadband. And in doing so, we knew that would be important because we believed that additional federal dollars would be coming through for infrastructure around broadband. And we also knew, as two different agencies, both the Regents and LDOE, we felt like we were chasing broadband and not equipped to do so. And we also know that other agency heads throughout the state were feeling that same way. And so we essentially contributed, shared in the contribution to fund the Office of Broadband for the first year. And then for the next 2 years, LDOE and the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education will continue that funding for 2 years to cover the cost of that office. So we are hopeful about what this investment might do for the future of our state. We are excited about some of the initial work that we are seeing, and we believe that this is most important to the future of our state. And at this time, I think I would ask Mr. Vineet Iyengar, the state's first director of broadband, to make this presentation.
Well, thank you, Superintendent, Commissioner Reed. Thank you to all of you guys, the Board of Regents and the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. In fact, when I made the first presentation, Superintendent, I think it was March 6th, so it was 3 weeks before I actually started the job. And I think between March 6th and today, we have actually moved leaps and bounds in terms of how we're structuring our office, how we're attacking the challenge and problem. And I am very confident, the Governor is very confident, a few of you are very confident that I think we're going to really effectively eliminate the digital divide by a stated date of 2029. Now, look, I think the pain point you hear is oftentimes in the parishes and the rural communities that 7.5 years is a long ways away, which it is. But I think we're working as quickly and efficiently with a sense of urgency to really address this in a number of different ways, both attacking the access problem, the literacy problem, and the affordability problem. So what I wanted to do is spend the next couple of minutes articulating the challenge that we have, but then quickly pivoting to the tactics and solutions that we have that's in front of us to addressing those three large buckets. So if you can go to the next slide. So what we did a couple of months ago is we asked McKinsey & Company just to do some secondary research and secondary analysis on framing out what the problem is in the state of Louisiana. And what they effectively articulated was that our challenge in the state can clearly be defined by, again, access, affordability, and digital literacy. If you start to look at the access challenge that we have based off data from the FCC, American Community Survey, based on the U.S. Census Bureau, we have close to 500,000 households in the state of Louisiana that lack the relevant speeds that are going to be important as we finish off the pandemic and as we move towards a digital future for our state. Second is that a good chunk, a significant minority of that number has an affordability challenge, and that frankly speaks to some of the structural affordability challenges that exist throughout the state of Louisiana. So it isn't something that's brand new, but something that's been there for decades and decades. And the third is digital literacy. And it isn't just digital literacy at the student level, but it's digital literacy at the adult level. And so we have 744,000 adults that effectively last year were told to completely shift their behavior when it comes to either paying bills, facilitating a telehealth visit, helping their kids with accommodating an education and instructional learning, and or for a lot of these folks working from home, which presented a seismic shift in behavior and how they historically have operated in their lives. And so those are the three challenges. Now, despite that, I really want to give a lot of credit to the private sector who over the last years, decades, have actually significantly invested in fiber and gigabit infrastructure to actually allow us to be in the top 18 according to US News when it comes to gigabit infrastructure. So that's a big deal. So the US News on an annual basis produces an infrastructure ranking of which broadband is 1/3 of that ranking. And so we rank number 18 given the investments that have been made historically in fiber and gigabit infrastructure. Now when you start to look at other rankings, when it comes to low price plans, speeds, we rank 33. Now, it's not the absolute best, it's not the absolute worst, but from my summary based off the challenges that we have based on where we are today, we have a very strong starting point. And I think we can effectively, again, I feel confident in solving that divide. 2029 is the vision for which we want to solve this problem. That was largely a vision set by the governor in late 2019 when he, through an executive order, created the Broadband for Everyone Louisiana Commission. So then collectively, we started all thinking about the challenges that the state was going to have when it comes to our digital future, even before the pandemic. So that was a critical first step. For every dollar invested, and I don't have to belabor the importance from an economic development perspective, you do get a 4 times multiplier for every dollar invested in anything broadband related, whether access, affordability, and or literacy. You now have, for the first time, not just one pot of money focused on broadband, you've got several dozen. And we're talking about 26 different federal pots of money based on the latest count from the National Governors Association, which also then includes potential money coming from the infrastructure bill that could help us solve the digital problem. And whether you take the Democratic $100 billion that President Biden has proposed for broadband, even if you take a look at the counter of Republicans, I think both have recognized clearly that broadband is a critical investment, it's infrastructure. And so even if you took the sort of Republican numbers that have been floated, Louisiana stands to get an additional $1 billion over an 8-year period focused on broadband. So again, substantial numbers, And I think with those financial resources, we can effectively solve it. So very tactically speaking on the infrastructure piece, the first quiver of the arrow, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this acronym RDOF sort of in ad nauseum. So last year, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, did a reverse auction, and through that reverse auction, they are investing $342 million in 13 different providers, internet service providers in the state of Louisiana to provide broadband service to over 175,000 households. Those households have been historically unserved. And the obligation that those 13 companies have is to build out their connectivity, largely fiber to the homes, if not at least 120 speeds, which is significantly higher than what the FCC defines as broadband speeds. And that obligation has to be completed and met over the next 6 years. So that's the first sort of quiver of the arrow. Now, where we are with RDOF is the FCC is currently evaluating the long forms, which is effectively the technical forms and the financial plans for each of these 13 companies. They're actively doing it, and it's our hopes that the FCC expedites that process, approves those long forms, financial plans that have been submitted by these companies, and they can start construction hopefully in the next 9 to 10 to 11 months. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago with the governor, we had the current FCC chairwoman participate and speak, and so she recognizes the need to expedite this process. So that's the first quiver there. The second is House Bill 648 that Representative Desipel authored. It's to create for the first time a state broadband grant program. That's going to be a grant program that is administered by our office. It's going to be $180 million. That $180 million is going to be coming from the Coronavirus Capital Projects Fund, which is part of the American Rescue Plan. And the legislature has set aside $90 million sort of the first year, and an appropriation or an allocation of $90 million in sort of year 2. We are currently drafting the rules of that program, and that's a process that we're getting to understand takes a couple of months. But we're optimistic, and our goals are in September, sometime in September of this year, that we will formally publish this grant program, push it out, and then hope that we get as many different providers, municipalities, and organizations to participate in partnership to further achieving this challenge of unserved markets. So if you were to combine the FCC RDOF plan, and if executed in the right way, and House Bill 648, we're talking about close to $560 million in hard investments that will impact 300,000 households over the next 5 to 6 years. So effectively, we can solve 60–65% of the access problem, and then based on what the infrastructure bill looks like, effectively finish the rest of the folks that need it from a fiber bill perspective on these markets. So this is what the RDOF map looks like, and what we'll do is we'll send you, for the benefit of all of you guys, a link that provides on a very granular level the census plots that are in each of the parishes that will receive RDOF high-speed broadband services. So if you look at this state, this is the state that these 13 companies bidded on. Obviously, you have different colors. So the areas in blue is Rural Electric Cooperative Consortium. I think they have 50,000 households that are going to provide high-speed broadband. Specifically, their plan is to provide fiber to the homes, directly to the homes in partnerships with co-ops. And then you've got other companies that are focused on different aspects of broadband. Now, with this map, not all of these companies are providing fiber to the home. In this case, SpaceX is going to provide low Earth orbit satellite services that is going to at least provide 120 speed higher. So this is what this map looks like, and our plans is the governor and I are going to meet with some of these companies, all of these companies, sometime in July, not early August, to really understand what we need to do to help accelerate their ability to be successful in these markets. Affordability, May 12th, and thanks to all of you, frankly, for really pushing this program out. The FCC on May 12th launched the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. We've had, since May 12th, so just over a month, we've had over 81,401 Louisianians benefit from this temporary relief on their internet bills, which actually places us in the top 5 in the country And so we have peers from other states that are asking, how did you get your number that high? And it's frankly, it's complete alignment between our office, the governor's office, everyone sitting at this table, and all of you guys really pushing this information out. Now, I think this money is first come, first served. I think there's still room for more and more people to apply and receive these funds based on certain eligibility criteria, but continue to send that message to all the constituencies that you represent that that's really important. FCC Emergency Connectivity Fund, July 1st. That's a program that's going to be coming out. It's going to be really focused on reimbursement of devices. So we're actively working with Carol Mosley and Luke Purdy, both at OTS and DOE, to come up with some programs to address some of the reimbursable issues on devices and for service. And then American Rescue Plan. And just from a American Rescue Plan, and I mentioned this in the previous slide, the Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund, which is the money that the parishes, towns, villages are getting, they can spend their infrastructure, their money on really three things: water, sewer, or broadband. Within broadband, they can spend their money on infrastructure, literacy, and affordability. And so some of the parishes that we've been talking to have an interest in understanding how they can leverage some of their fiscal recovery dollars to address affordability, to maybe creating their own emergency broadband benefit program, or to address digital literacy, because that's a big pain point that we have in the state. And speaking of literacy, this is where it becomes really exciting, because I think this is where we can really work on creating some really innovative public-private partnerships together. I think we had a great conversation with Commissioner Reed, and they're doing a number of different things within the Board of Regents to addressing digital literacy. What's really fascinating to us when it comes to literacy, and really talking to the adults in the state, 744,000 adults, is that there are 355 towns in Louisiana that have below 6,000 people. So you're talking about close to half the state's population. Majority of those places are north of I-10. So we're talking about Alexandria, Northeast, Central, Northwest, sort of Sabine, DeSoto area. What's really interesting in a lot of these towns that I've observed is typically you're going to have a very active library system. You have an LSU Ag Extension office, you have a community college system. So you've got the pieces in place. What you also have is, ironically enough, singularly the most impactful consumer-oriented store where people can buy groceries, and you have Dollar General, right? I think Dollar Generals have a role to play in this. In fact, pending the weather, we are flying tomorrow to meet with our office and the commissioner to talk about some of their literacy efforts, because not only are they having challenges that they want to address on the literacy side in a lot of the markets that they operate in, but they also, ironically enough, have a broadband problem because of a lot of the small towns that they're operating in. So some of their executives are flying in, again, pending the weather, tomorrow from Tennessee to meet with us to talk about how we can tackle the literacy challenge and issues around broadband. So we're actively piecing together some of these best practices. And again, I mentioned the common theme, American Rescue Plan money, which can be used again for literacy programs. So in a nutshell, Office of Broadband Connectivity, my first day on the job is March 29th. We will be fully staffed up by Tuesday. So we will have 2 more FTEs, which is going to be very helpful. The second is we want to develop a baseline understanding of broadband including stakeholders. There is quite a large knowledge gap in areas throughout the state in terms of what isn't broadband, why is it important, and where to get started. So our office is creating a toolkit effectively with the FAQs to help parish leaders, police jurors, community members understanding how to get started, where to get started, and how to execute locally. I mentioned a crowdsourced mapping effort that we partnered with the Delta Regional Authority on, and that's a speed test. We've had over 4,500 folks throughout the state of Louisiana submit a speed test locally from their households. And so we would encourage you to continue to push out information on that speed test, which is found on the DOA website, doa.la.gov. And again, fundamentally, there's all of this federal programs, whether it's federal grant programs focused on tribal areas, whether there's federal programs focused on addressing broadband for HBCUs. Consistently, there are broadband programs created focused on certain segments of society that frankly need boosting, right? Whether it's HBCUs, tribal areas, the farmers. So we're actively working with our colleagues locally here to understand further the depth and breadth of the problem specifically in those areas, but also with our federal partners to understand what's coming down the pipeline, what programs would be applicable for which parishes, areas, regions, and how we can be successful in competing for some of that money. I think we can stop there. This speaks a little bit more tactics, but fundamentally what the conversations I'm having and sort of the advice that I'm giving as I travel throughout the state is for folks to have as much patience as possible in this process. We have till December 2024 to commit to spend this $180 million for the grant program. So it's a very finite period of time, but this money doesn't behave like CARES money, which has a hyperactive shot clock. The second is to maintain as much flexibility as possible. A different solution, a solution in St. Tammany is going to be far different than a solution in East Carroll, and it's going to be far different of a solution in Calcasieu. So it's very much like healthcare, which is very local. Broadband is also very local. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all. So we're trying as much as we can to standardize the knowledge gap, understand what's out there, to help these folks execute and achieve that goal of eliminating the digital divide. And then fundamentally to use our Office of Ideas programs and plans. So we're, again, actively spending time out on the road. Yesterday we were in Addis, Louisiana. Tonight we're going to Patterson. I think next week or longer we're going to Western Road. So spending as much time to understand the assets that exist locally, who are the players, who we need to gather and convene together are important constituencies are critical as we start to get further with that. Happy to answer any questions if you have time.
Thank you. This report. Yes, Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Chairman Holloway. I have two questions. First of all, really excited about the progress you've made in just 3 months.
Mr. Morris.
There? Yeah. Okay. So very excited about the progress you made in just 3 months. As you roll out the network, you mentioned the RDOF community as first step. I was interested in the transmission speed. They got a minimum transmission speed, and so over a 10-year period of time, I'm curious if you plan on standardizing the transmission speed, or if you would increase the speed in different step changes over time, and what's the marginal cost of 25 degrees to 100? How does that play out?
So the speeds, broadband speeds are largely defined, not solely defined by the FCC, right? So they define broadband speeds as 25 down, 3 upload. So I think before the pandemic that may have worked because you had fewer members of a household that were on each device at the same time, right? Everything shifted online or back home and everyone needed bandwidth, for lack of a better term. So I think the FCC is looking at redefining the speed, perhaps into the future. This year they're defining broadband as 25.3. Now in our state broadband grant program, we are effectively looking at awarding 4 points in our program for higher builds. So if someone wants to build fiber and if it makes sound, logical sense for a community, then we'll award more points. So that's 100, 100, 120, and 25.3 speeds minimum. So we're actively looking at that. Now with RDOF, the commitment they've made is that they have to provide at least 100 by 20 speeds, if not higher. So in the 2 largest recipients of RDOF money, which is the areas in blue and areas in green, they have committed to the FCC that they're going to provide fiber to the home. And that's 100,000 plus households out of 175,000 households. In the case of Starlink, which I think is the 3rd largest concession, I think they're providing broadband speeds of 120, if not higher, to 30,000 households. So the idea is, with all this money and financial resources, is to really invest in the future as opposed to perhaps a critical place where you have to reinvest in the same location very quickly.
So you don't see a state standard for Louisiana, basically it's the minimum FCC standard for now, and then you're incentivizing folks with a bachelor's.
Correct.
Okay, so I only have two questions. Second question. Really impressed with the reach out to Dollar General and the innovative approach there. I was curious about any engagement with the medical community. I know that requires faster speeds.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of interest there. Just curious if you engage that group yet, what kind of feedback you got.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So actually next Friday, I think on the 24th, I think that's next Thursday, I'm actually meeting with Secretary Phillips to talk about at a state level that convergence between broadband and healthcare. I have a healthcare background prior to my service in the mayor's office, and I think what you saw was an explosion.
It was supposed to be a softball question. So.
Okay, but anyway, my point is, telehealth is here to stay, and you're beginning to see in a lot of these small towns the lack of a primary care doctor or a dermatologist or behavioralist, and that's where telehealth can come in. So anyway, I'm having a conversation next week with the secretary to talk about that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have one question.
Yes, sir. Mr. Seal.
During the period of time that this program will be going forward, what would you expect to be happening in the private sector in reaching some of these rural communities where they're not reaching now? In other words, if you project out 3 or 4 or 5 years, will private sector companies be offering broadband capability to the same population in the marketplace as opposed to through this program?
Yes, so RDOF is the first solid attempt to reduce the capital expenses required for these companies to move into areas that are considered unserved. The Gumbo grant program is designed to do the same thing. And so you could see a scenario, let's say, parish X, we'll call something parish X, where the cost of providing high-speed broadband may cost $5 million, and that's where you have the private sector putting in 20% of the early bill. You have the municipality optionally putting in 5%, maybe the school board putting in 5%, and then the state through these federal programs that putting in the balance of that money, which is the 70%. So anything that we can do to help reduce the capital expenses for the private sector to move in to areas that are unserved is, I think, this, for the first time, there's a market opportunity to aggressively pursue that given the financial resources that are coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Davis.
So as we begin to get in our assessment results over the summer, I'm sure that one of the things that we're interested in is going to be how parental digital literacy as well as broadband access influenced how kids do on our assessments. And so my question is, what is the finest or the smallest geographical unit that your measures of digital literacy and access are going to be available?
So that's a really good question, and frankly, I don't know, right? I mean, I think we're still trying to unpack the not necessarily the size of the problem, but how much of an impact we can have through the programs that we're looking to roll out in conjunction with the Commissioner's Office, et cetera. So it's a little bit too early for me to understand very tactically. So we're mocking up a number of best practices. I think that's where, for instance, a Dollar General could be helpful. Because if you start that behavior shift, given the role that they could play in some of these smaller markets, then that could be interesting.
So the numbers that you have given us to date, and so I think, first of all, I totally am impressed with the Dollar General observation because we have a farm in Washington Parish and I pass about 5 Dollar Generals just getting to the house, as well as line service for internet access stops across the road and has not moved for our farm in about 5 years. So I think that this is a really interesting and innovative opportunity. But when it comes to your, so you told us what your digital literacy problems are to date. Is that data going to be available like at the parish level across the state, like even before we see movement?
Yeah, I can circle back with the folks that put together the data to understand how granular that data is.
That would
I'll
be
circle
great.
back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Anyone else? Questions? Yes, Ms. Carol Understand.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for such an informative presentation. Just a quick question. So who are our peer states on this?
So every state's going through the same issues, asking the same questions at the same time. There are certain states that are a little bit further ahead. So North Carolina, we're actively, regularly having weekly conversations in terms of how they're addressing issues around digital inclusion, digital equity, but also access affordability. I think the speed at which we're moving is probably a little bit more faster than they are, namely because we're starting from scratch. And they've had they've had to deal with incumbent issues over the last 4, 5, 6 years. But we're doing okay. And that's my message to all of you is, we're not the only state that's now figuring out and waking up to this broadband challenge. I actively participate in the National Governors Association's calls with my peers and colleagues on a monthly basis. And the National Telecommunications Information Agency puts together a state broadband leaders network conversation on a monthly basis. And again, we're all figuring it out at the same time and sort of leaning on each other. But it's really North Carolina and Virginia that we're
Working most closely with,
Yeah.
but that infrastructure, learning infrastructure really comes from the FGA, from the.
Correct.
That's what you're saying. Okay,
Correct.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any objection? Motion carried. Next item, before reading the next item, I do want to introduce you to the newly appointed Board of Regents Chair, Blake David, and he will have.
I'm laughing, yes, we say David.
I am too. Okay, Blake David. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to allow him to read a 4.2 so we can work on this together.
Well, thank you so much. All right, 4.2, we're going to talk about the Fast Forward program and jumpstarting times.
Motion to receive.
And who, Dr. Rumble, you're.
Need a motion.
We got a motion on
Oh, I'm
front
sorry.
end? Okay.
Oh,
Well,
I'm so
there-
sorry,
no,
I
no, no.
didn't teach you that. Say, motion, please.
Gotcha. I usually do on the backside, but that's fine. So I'll read the whole thing so I have the right motion. 4.2, consideration of an update report regarding the Fast Forward program. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Mears, a second? Yes. Okay. Sorry, Regent President. All right. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So really excited to bring this update to the Chair Board today, understanding that many of you on the dais are at different points in terms of where you are in having received this information. I'm just going to try to start and do an overview from the beginning. Apologies to my board who went through some of this presentation yesterday. Basically, along with my partner, Commissioner Reed, my fabulous partner in this work, where we are so aligned to try to do better for kids from birth all the way through preparation for work and beyond. We worked to develop this initiative called the Fast Forward Initiative. It's an opportunity to rethink the high school experience for our kids and their families. It is not a mandatory experience for students. However, it is an additional opportunity. We both believe that personalization of the high school experience is really important. We both believe that we have to be more deliberate in terms of when a student graduates May 15th, that handoff on May 16th, what's next for them in their lives. And in fact, I think that you will see more initiatives coming forward from us around those particular things as the years evolve. But the fast forward overview that you have on your screen basically shares out that what we're thinking through is the opportunity for students to graduate high school dually with their high school diploma and a full apprenticeship. That's one example. So the full apprenticeship is not an internship where someone goes and spends a few days in the business of it. An apprenticeship, a full apprenticeship, is a fully immersed experience where students would potentially spend 11th and 12th grade at those sites where they're doing those apprenticeships, and then they're graduating high school, particularly as an electrician level 2, or HVAC level 2, or carpenter level 2, whatever it might be in those particular career paths. The other opportunity, likewise, would be in partnership with our community colleges. So students could have the opportunity on their high school campus or at the actual community college to invest their 11th and 12th grade year and would dually graduate with a high school degree and an associate's degree. And then the final piece and third bucket of this would be students having the opportunity to earn their first 2 years of that ultimate 4-year degree or graduate degree, all while in high school. Now, these are lofty goals, and we understand that, but we believe in our educators, and we believe that this can be done, and that this will be done for students where this makes a ton of sense. We have talked and we have shared this idea that the entry point of work has shifted. I'm not the only person that says that, although my board hears that from me all the time. The entry point of work has shifted, and students need something beyond the traditional high school diploma. They need a credential, they need an apprenticeship, they need an associate's degree, or they need that 4-year degree and beyond. So right now we have a ton of energy around these types of movements, not just between Commissioner Reed and myself and our agencies, but also dually between Board of Regents and the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. We see this work taking place in action in our legislature. We know that our higher ed institutions, both at that community college level and 4-year institution level, they're bought into this idea, as well as so many of our workforce partners throughout the state. So we are trying to capitalize on a ton of energy to create a better and more futuristic high school experience for our students. So need to once again thank both BESE and Board of Regents for committing $25,000 each from both of those bodies to all of the various workforce regions throughout our state. So we were able to give the workforce regions throughout the state each $50,000 to come together over the spring, pull in K-12, pull in higher ed, and pull in workforce, and develop a set of new high school graduation pathways for students that were specific to those local areas. They were embedded in the local context. And so what you might see is a school system and a community college system and a workforce system in Southeast Louisiana, for example, may have developed a completely different set of new graduation pathways than potentially those same types of individuals and organizations in Northeast Louisiana. So your grants that you helped provide were a catalyst to the pathways that were developed. What you will see is a number of different regions. On the screen you see Region 1, basically the greater New Orleans region, Jefferson. You see Region 2, the Baton Rouge area, and then Region 3, that's Terrebonne and Tacoma area. And what you see for these 3 different regions are the pathways that were developed between school systems and higher ed institutions and workforce. So just to call a few out, Region 1, you will see that our students in Region 1 will have the opportunity to not simply receive their high school degree upon graduation, but if they complete the requirements, they could also receive an applied science degree, an associate's degree in cloud computing from Delgado Community College. If you look in Region 2, which is Baton Rouge, you see an opportunity for an associate's degree in computing and information systems. When you look at Region 3, you see an opportunity through Fletcher Technical Community College for an associate's degree of arts and humanities. Looking at Region 4, which is essentially Acadiana, there's an opportunity with South Louisiana Community College for an applied science degree in technical studies with a focus in industrial marine electronics. Southwest Louisiana, which is Region 5, you see an associate's degree that's a transfer degree that has different concentrations through Northwestern State. And so there are concentrations for students in biology, nursing, business administration, education, and psychology. Looking at Region 6, which is Sinwap, there's an associate's degree opportunity that has been developed for applied science in practical nursing. Looking at Region 7, which is Northwest Louisiana, I'll point out an apprenticeship opportunity. So this is an apprenticeship in electrical work, in being an electrician. In Region 8, Northeast Louisiana, I'll call out Louisiana Delta Community College and the school systems there, and they built a pathway for industrial instrumentation. And I know in Northeast Louisiana particularly, instrumentation is a very important craft. And so what you have seen through these various regions is a number of new graduation pathways for students during their high school experience that we are excited about. You see them both at the associate's degree level, but also a few apprenticeships. I believe we have 36 associate degree pathways that we are asking our board to consider and that were approved yesterday in committee. And we have 3 apprenticeship pathways. And so what will happen in these experiences is that students over their high school career, and specifically in 11th and 12th grade, will have a completely new and different experience. And they would have the opportunity to be gaining these college credits in a structured way that moves them towards a degree. Now, will every student that enters one of these paths graduate with that associate's degree? Maybe not. But what we know is that they will have a set of courses that are aligned towards that associate's degree, and they make sense, and they have a meaningful progression of coursework. And so we think that that makes a ton of sense. And all of this work, as Commissioner Reed can also share, is aligned to the work that they're doing in higher ed. We're excited about the partnership. We're thankful for leadership and membership, both at the Board of Regents and BESE, for allowing us to do this important work and supporting this important work as we move forward. So, Commissioner Reed, I don't know if you have any additions to that, but that is base information.
Thank you so much. Certainly excited about the Fast Forward initiative. As my partner in education has said, this represents opportunity for our students. A new way of thinking about the high school experience to make sure that we are providing the kinds of credentials that allow students to accelerate exposure to careers, understand what the future may be for them, and make sure they have more time on task in terms of building their skill opportunities. So just want to say how much we appreciate the partnership. Certainly, as Superintendent Brumley mentioned, the 2-year and 4-year institutions in Louisiana were so excited to participate in this work. We think an early start for these students is important in getting them exposed and engaged early. And as you all know, we've set a big goal to increase educational attainment in our state by 2030 to 60%. And we graduate about 40,000 students a year in higher education, but you all graduate about 40,000 students in high school as well. So more students getting that credential early is a win for our state, for families, and certainly for students. So we're very excited about it, delighted that you all are moving this pathway forward. I'll also mention that I love the fact that it's portable. So my understanding from the superintendent and Ken is once you approve the pathways, if other school districts are interested in participating, they can avail themselves of these pathways as well. So it's a smart pilot that has tremendous opportunity to scale throughout our state. So thank you very much.
Yeah, one addition is that we too are sensitive around the high school experience and things that matter, like a student being in marching band, or a student playing football, or a student being in yearbook. And so with these opportunities, it does not limit those co and extracurricular opportunities that students might also choose to participate in. They would still be linked to their high school campus and have the opportunity to participate in those type of events. A little extra context, I know our board has heard this information a few times, but if we think about associate's degrees in our state for students who graduate high school dually with a high school degree and the associate's degree, out of over 42,000 high school graduates in our last year of captured data, we only had 150 students who graduated high school with a high school degree and an associate's degree. So there's a ton of opportunity there. And then when we think about the fully immersed apprenticeships in these career, technical, vocational, tradescrafts areas, out of, again, 42,000 graduates, we had, I believe, 9 students who earned their high school degree as well as a full apprenticeship. So there, again, a lot of opportunity in front of us, and we're thankful for the combined support of our board.
Great, thank you both. We have a motion and a second. I see we have a couple of questions. Regent Seal.
Dr. Brumley, what is the possibility to track the progress of students who complete these programs in year 2, year 3, year 4 after their completion, just so you have data to know to what extent it's working?
Yeah, thank you, Regent Seal. I actually would ask Commissioner Reed to respond to that because I know this is an area where she has particularly been working.
Sure, happy to do that. So we are very interested in making sure we're measuring outcomes. We have the opportunity now with more data sharing as a result of legislation that was just passed through this legislative session to have more information between K-12 and higher education to know how students are progressing. So this was very specific for us to ask that we have more information available to us because we do want to make sure we're seeing what happens to those students. Do they go into the world of work and excel? Do they go straight into a 4-year or continuation of an educational program or pathway? What does it mean for their opportunity, for their earning potential moving forward? Did they stay in their field of interest? Did they move to another area? So we passed legislation this session both to allow K-12 and higher education to share more data, but also higher education and the Workforce Commission to share more data. So this education to employment pipeline is of significant interest to all of you, and more data availability and analysis will allow us to answer those questions.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Regent Solomon.
Thank you very much. I think it's so important, like Regent Seal just suggested, to have the objective outcomes measured. I'm also interested to know, as these are new pilot initiatives, how we're measuring the more subjective feedback of students going through these programs for the first time, along the line, Superintendent, as you mentioned about them having the high school experience. That is important, but also want to get their feedback on, are these programs working for them, both emotionally and in their family life, and in the way that they balance other priorities, and how we can tweak and improve them over time. So how do we measure that subjective feedback or capture that subjective feedback?
Yeah, I think that's an important component, an important question, and I believe what we can do in partnership with Regents is identify a research track that would run alongside this program to actually have those conversations with students and families and educators, and that's a really good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Regent Sterling.
Thank you. Congratulations on laying out a plan, and I appreciate Commissioner Reed's point about that this can be replicated across the region. My question is, how do private partners plug in if they're interested in a region in replicating a program? What's the entree for the business community to understand how they may continue to enhance support?
Yeah, we saw some of that happening in the various regions. So for instance, I'll just take the Region 2, which is the capital region. And so what happened here in Baton Rouge is not only did we have the school systems and community colleges and higher ed institutions, but we had, for instance, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber work alongside and pull in some business and industry partners to be part of those conversations, and that worked really well. And so I think that we have a set of early adopters, but I believe that as this progresses and hopefully as it is successful, we'll see more business and industry want to directly partner. I'll give you a healthcare example. One of the healthcare examples that you see listed is a pathway with Ochsner. So Ochsner Hospital has actually said, look, we want to take a set of students as 11th graders and give them the training over the 2 years so that whenever they graduate high school, they're ready to be employed by us. And they would also have the skill set that they would need for that high school diploma. I think that as examples like that are successful, we'll see more business and industry want to do those exact or near type things.
So what's the timeline on that transfer? Because that's the exact example. Certainly with the nursing shortage and the healthcare shortage, you could very easily transfer that pilot in most of your large health systems.
Yeah, exactly. So these early adopters, hopefully we'll see some of these begin over the course of this year. And then we will track out planning of additional pathways moving forward with, as Regent Solomon said, running alongside that, what information have we gleaned through the experience. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's beyond one medical organization. It's multiple, but it's also beyond medicine. It's into other areas as well. And so we are looking at that. We think we'll learn a lot this year and we'll have opportunity to move forward.
Thank you very much.
And Regent Stone, we welcome your assistance in making sure we can do that across industries.
Mr. Garvey, you have a question?
Yes. I was wondering if y'all have worked out the financial aspects of this, the cost. Is this going to be paid for through MFP dollars or MFP dollars plus discounts from the higher ed institutions or what? Or have we gotten that far?
No, we have. I think that the community, I know the community colleges and the higher ed institutions have given our systems really good rates on hours. I think they also recognize that, like you recognize and you pointed out multiple times, Mr. Garvey, if a student can become engaged in a university, whether 2-year or 4-year, as a part of the high school experience, they're more likely to end up at that university and be successful beyond year 1 at that university. So I think that higher ed sees that as an opportunity as well, and rightfully so, that they have given good rates. Funding is through the MFP as well as local dollars that are generated in systems through sales and properties taxes. As mentioned yesterday, Superintendent Boucher mentioned, at the same time, we need to be exploring additional opportunities for funding. Legislatively, Representative Brass's legislation created a framework for dual enrollment, but obviously the funding is not associated with that, so hopefully there will be an opportunity there as well. But also, as I mentioned yesterday, high schools too are going to have to make decisions on staffing and how they might choose to staff their schools depending on what opportunities they want for their students.
And that leads partially to my next question, which is, have y'all worked out an estimate of how much of the time, or what percentage of these classes will be delivered on high school campuses by elementary or by teachers that are employed by the high schools? What percentage will be supplied on high school campuses by teachers that are employed by the higher institutions that are coming onto the high school campus? And the remainder, what percentage is going to be delivered on the higher ed campus?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers with me right now. This is going to look different in the various regions and the various pathways, but we will have that information at the conclusion of year 1. I tend to believe it would the majority of that would be delivery at the high school campus. I know that we would like to see more delivery at the community college and higher ed physically, but I tend to think probably at the beginning you will see more at that high school campus than the latter. But we can track that out.
Do we have any significant amount of the higher ed teachers looking to come or talking about coming volunteering to come onto the high school campus?
I think we'll get into some of this in the next discussion where we're doing the dual enrollment, annual dual enrollment report, because Adam Lowe has some data around that we'll be sharing. But I think I would say in this process, when these were being developed, these 36 were being developed regionally, Dr. Craig from Board of Regents and myself, as these meetings were occurring, we were seeing the high school campuses work through the LCTCS to become satellite campuses. So we do know that there are going to be those instances where sometimes the students, for instance, I would say like in the Ascension region right now, those students actually go to the Parishes Community College. But we also see it's part of this process where students in the St. James Parish, they actually are they are SACS accredited to be a satellite campus. So for instance, in their school system, they will actually have a dedicated space which will be for like River Parishes Community College to deliver their courses.
Another example, Mr. Garvey, would be in Jefferson Parish, for instance. Patrick Taylor High School is right there with Delgado's River campus. And so, you're going to have opportunities like that where physically those locations are side by side. I believe that exists in St. Bernard as well.
Yes. Ms. Boccia?
Yes, I am from St. John Parish, I'm superintendent of schools there. We work very collaboratively with the community college and the LCTCS system. Credentialing of our teachers who are on the K-12 campus in order to be credentialed to teach a dual enrollment course, you're looking at teachers needing at least 18 graduate hours in the content area they're teaching. Or there can be partnerships with the community colleges to have teachers of record that they would send on to the campus and courses taught on high school campus as well. So we have a combination of courses, some of which are taught on our high school campus, some that we send maybe to the community college or the four-year institution. But we are making a movement, I know locally and I think statewide, in credentialing many of our K-12 educators to have the appropriate course content to be an adjunct professor at the community college level. And that is going to be a significant movement forward. If just like we have students who are dual enrolled, we're looking to have educators who have credentials to teach both at K-12 and at the community college level as well. And I think that will help to spur the program, because when we talk about high school experience, we do want to encourage kids to have a full high school experience. So they want to play football, they want to be a class officer, if they want to participate in all of the aspects of K-12 life, we want them to be physically present to an extent on that high school campus to be able to excel in that area, as well as having the opportunities to pursue an associate degree or an apprenticeship program. So there's a fine balance here, because we all have to realize we're dealing with 15, 16, and 17-year-olds who are making decisions about their futures and have to be in pathways that their interests may change. So while they're getting these particular credentials, we're making sure that they've got opportunities to pursue anything they wish to beyond that high school experience as well. And I know there's a lot involved in this, but the experience of this is going to be tremendous. The opportunities for our kids are going to be tremendous. We've just got to be very purposeful in how we plan those opportunities for teenagers so that they can experience both the best of both worlds and prepare for their future. So the credentialing of our educators is extremely important, I think, to move this particular program forward. And the willingness of the community college professors to teach courses on our campuses is also important as well.
Thank you, Ms. Boccia. I appreciate that. Scar.
Yeah, going back to what Ms. Boccia was just talking about, the extra effort that some teachers have to go through to get qualified to teach this stuff. Is there any thoughts about seeking extra money in the MFP to help pay for the extra costs of some of this, some of these proposals, either to pay teachers an extra amount to incentivize them to get the 18 hours to get certified to teach college credits, or a pot of money to pay for some of these other expenses?
We can certainly explore that, for sure, Mr. Garland.
But there's no thoughts, no thoughts have been put in yet?
Not around the MFP. I mean,
Let's look at it.
other than some of the differentiated compensation we've formerly explored around MFP.
I would add that we did have a series of recommendations from the Dual Enrollment Task Force. One of those was to seek funding from the legislature, I believe it was $2 million, and to have a pot of funding to help make sure we're duly credentialing K-12 teachers. That was the first, so we were excited about that. I think that was a year ago, and then the first day of session was the first day of COVID, and so that was wiped out in terms of the opportunity. Then we recognize that educators now are very focused and very busy making sure we get beyond COVID and that we are addressing the students' needs. But it is certainly on our list to come back to have a conversation about how do we accelerate opportunities for educators to have this experience. But I will say, the exposure is important for our students in high school. So I want to make sure that the high school student is meeting a college faculty member, is staying on a college campus to the extent they can, and also has a high school teacher who also has the opportunity and the credentials to teach them through Enrollment. I think the robust experiences, all of those help provide more opportunity for our students.
I would, separate conversation, but just a point I would like to add is, together, we built a really strong strength of diploma accountability presentation that aligns to legislation, aligns to the work of the dual enrollment task force, and it incentivizes this to happen. And without that revamped strength of diploma piece, I don't think that we will see the quantity that we would like to see out of this initiative. And that will be for, now I believe, BESE's consideration on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to August, getting that part passed.
One last question from Regents Solomon.
One follow-up question, or just a point to be made. I think that to hear about I worry a little bit about persisting equity gaps that might exist when we have students that can't afford to make transportation from one school to a college campus or the school with the apprenticeship location. I just wonder if you have thought through and talked through how we ensure that we track, we don't persist equity gaps, even while we offer these additional programs.
Yeah, we don't actually even see that as an issue, because that will be part of what the system and the financial agreement covers. So we're not expecting students to be, having to purchase bus passes and those types of things.
Thank you so much.
And Regent Pryor, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, or good morning. I just wanted to mention our new BESE member, Michael Mellery from Shreveport, and I attended a meeting last week at our Caddo Parish School Board on this very issue, where they are making use of the extra funding they're receiving to dive into encouraging students. And this is so important to our ultimate goal, because that's the class of students of our population that we are losing, that end up in bad situations or in criminal activity, is to give these kids a certificate to work, to train, in fields where they can start making money now, and as welders, as mechanics, but they told us about all kinds of things. Now, the Caddo Parish, there already was a technical school in existence, and it holds 1,600 students, and currently have less than 1,000. So there is room in our existing programs that we already have, so it can be cost efficient if we just have to move to encourage, push, prod, at-risk young men to get into these fields so they can make money, support their families, and change the state.
Mr. Pryor, I would add to that, and I know the facility well there in Caddo. We have, I don't think we will have, after these pathways are created, we have had structural barriers that have prevented sites like that from being at capacity. So for instance, it might be, how does a student complete English 4 at their high school, which covering things like Macbeth and et cetera that are really important, but how do they do that at the high school and then work out the schedule to still get to that facility and still do football and all of those things. And so what we have tried to do with this proposal, and I understand it from the rural setting and I understand it from the urban setting, is break down some of those barriers to access. And that's what this does. It gives systems the flexibility to create those pathways without some of those barriers. Now, granted, there will still be barriers, but certainly this reduces some of those barriers. When you're thinking about a rural setting, you're again talking about a student potentially having to get on a bus 40 minutes one way to a community college. You know, how do they do that when they also have to have, you know, 5 hours worth of classes at their high school? You cannot do both things oftentimes. And so, again, here we're trying to break down barriers to be able to accomplish the things that you are describing.
Thank y'all so much, and I love all these questions. I hadn't known this board that long, but long enough to remember meetings between BESE and Regents where we talked about things we really like to see happen and things we'd like to see accomplished. And it's beautiful to be here, to hear y'all talk about what we are doing right now. And you two and your staffs have done it, and just amazing. With all these great questions, I don't want to be lost. It's great to see new pathways being created. And we're about to get, I think, a great dual enrollment report to talk about how we're doing better there. We're going to always do better in every way, but it's great to see us working so well together and having good progress reports. Thank you all. We've had a motion and a second. Any other questions? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Duffy. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for this presentation on Fast Forward. Dr. Henry, appreciate you and all your great work. Mr. Ken Bradford, you're behind the scenes, Mr. Bradford, behind the scenes working so diligent. And Dr. Bromley, thank you for this presentation on Fast Forward. And more exciting news as we move forward with item 4.3, consideration of an update report regarding the dual enrollment task force. I would need a motion, please. Yes, Ms. Jones and Mr. Rock seconded. And presentation by Dr. Hunter Reed. Please, you may move forward.
Thank you, delighted to do so. So when you think about the work that we have been focused on and your request, because your leadership has said to us, do amazing things for students in Louisiana. Think bigger and broader to make sure more students have opportunity. And certainly dual enrollment has been one place where we really tried to lean into. We have a statewide task force. In 2020, the task force asked the Department of Education, the Board of Regents, to produce a state report on the state of dual enrollment in Louisiana and understand where we are so we know where we want to go. I would also mention that in 2019, the Board of Regents and BESE set a joint goal that by the class of 2029, every student will graduate high school with a college credit or credential. So the work you see today is our focus on implementing that vision and that big goal for the students of our state. So in this report, I'm delighted to have Adam Lowe with Education Strategy Group present this report for us. You will see schools that are celebrated that have 80% or more of their high school go Cubs. We also in the report focus as well on the schools that have 80% of their minority students participating in dual enrollment. And schools like Lincoln Prep, Thrive Academy, Holden High, and Phoenix High School also who have representatives here today. So we want to learn from people who are doing it very well and make sure that the school districts that are not strong adopters have the opportunity to participate because we know these experiences matter for students. So I'll stop there and ask Adam Lowe if he will share the report. Lynn Baker is also with us, who is our Assistant Commissioner of the Board of Regents, so I'm going to scoot over so she can come to the table as well. But we are excited about this report. It's a learning journey for us, and Adam, thank you so much for your work.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Reed, for the kind introduction and welcome and the continued engaged leadership that you and Dr. Brumley bring to talent development and education in the state. It brings me great pleasure to be back here with you today in Baton Rouge. I was last in town right before Mardi Gras 2020, and I was here working with Regents and Department of Education staff conceptualizing this very project. So it's only fitting that as we emerge from the 15 months of pain and suffering that my first professional trip is back here to Baton Rouge. And I'm here to share with you some insights about the characteristics of dual enrollment programs and participation in the state. For the past 2 years, I and my colleagues at Education Strategies Group have been supporting Regents along with the Department of Education and the Dual Enrollment Task Force, working on developing a statewide framework to expand access and equity in dual enrollment. Our firm, ESG, is a mission-driven consulting firm. We work with local and state leaders to design, scale, and implement strategies to improve attainment and we specialize particularly in strengthening the transition points across systems, which really dual enrollment is an exemplar program where systems are collaborating both at the local and state level to achieve success for students. And we supported some dual enrollment, similar initiatives in places such as Minnesota, Kentucky, and Washington State. This inaugural annual report really represents our first attempt to prepare a comprehensive analysis of dual enrollment participation in programs in Louisiana. There's some discussion earlier about looking at outcomes. That's not necessarily a component of this report. It is something that we certainly hope to facilitate some additional research on in the future. Regents has done some outcomes analysis in the past on a more limited basis. But really, this is really to look at a kind of baseline understanding of the programs as they exist and patterns in order to better identify where gaps in the current system are and to identify opportunities for continued improvement. The full report is in your packets, and today in this presentation I'm going to do just a very brief overview of some of the main findings, but certainly happy to do follow-up with any of you individually or collectively after the meeting. So the first four areas on the 4 areas you see on the screen are the areas that I'm going to focus in on. I want you to note that this report was based upon data from the 2018-19 school year, so the last completed school year prior to the pandemic. There will always be a reporting lag time in doing analysis of this sort, but we do certainly anticipate that in future years we can produce it more quickly as a result of having gone through this exercise once and developed a lot of the data sharing agreements between regions and the department. We're certainly already looking at some indicators, leading indicators to look at the impact of the pandemic. Secondly, as I mentioned, there was a considerable amount of integration of dual enrollment data that's collected both by the Department of Education's student transcript system as well as the Regents student profile system. And so this was really an attempt to try to integrate across the two systems to be able to use the best data that each system collects to provide a more comprehensive analysis. And I'm pleased to report that the matching the data systems actually works pretty well. Especially for students in public schools, a little less so for students in private and non-public and Catholic schools. But among public school students attending public colleges and universities, we've got pretty good, pretty reliable matching of data. As Dr. Reed mentioned, at the December 19 meeting of these two boards, there was a joint goal set that every student should graduate high school with college credit, a post-secondary credential of value, beginning with the high school freshman class of 2025, senior class of 2029. So a decade from out from the graduates of the 2018-19 school year, you can see how far we've got to go. So 2/3 of students have earned college credit through either a dual enrollment class, an AP class, or an international baccalaureate class in a few cases, or through testing on the CLEP test, or have earned an industry-based credential. So as Regents continues to refine its post-secondary credentials of value framework, that IBC relationship may adjust a little bit as we track this. But I want to point out that there is still 1/3 of students, 13,500 students, who graduated without any post-secondary credit. So we know that these students propel students to success in college and careers. Thus, this need to focus our efforts on that remaining 1/3 and expanding access. I'd also like to point out that dual enrollment is the largest such college transition program. Statewide, 32% of public high school graduates in 2018-19 took at least one dual enrollment class. It also has very strong potential for expansion. We've talked about some ways that may happen already. But given the depth of the programs that are offered by Louisiana colleges and universities in both general education programs as well as the career technical fields. So of the 28 public colleges and universities that are across all 4 systems, the LSU system, the University of Louisiana system, Southern system, and LCTCS, nearly 20% of the students who attend a dual enrollment class through one of those public colleges and universities are actually from non-public and Catholic schools. So I think it's important to remember from the post-secondary perspective, they're serving a wide range of students in the state, not just the public schools, but certainly 80% of students coming from public schools is the lion's share of them. I wanted to start a little bit with delivery methods, since Mr. Garvey, you were asking earlier specifically about this. We don't have data specifically on instructor type or course location. Neither of the data systems can get at that level of granularity. But we do know that the delivery method in terms of online or in person. So we know about 13% of the courses delivered in 2018-19 were either online or hybrid, where at least half the class was online. And the majority, 87%, were on-site at either a college or high school location. So even pre-pandemic, we have a good half dozen colleges and universities that have very significant online programs to serve students in places where access is a challenge physically. Obviously, this will be a baseline data for which we will be able to see a lot more change in the last 2 years. By grade level, not surprisingly, the majority of students do take a dual enrollment class while they're in their 12th grade, and very few who are taking it in 9th and 10th grade. And I think this sort of shows to some of the conversation earlier about redesigning the high school experience. Certainly, there is significant potential for high schools to reinvent that senior year to incorporate more college experiences. And lastly, this field of study. I'm going to come back to this later, where 25% of enrollments are in career and technical subjects. But of the general education courses taken by students, over 90% of those were highly transferable courses that are listed on the Regents Master Course or Academic Matrix. So mathematics, English language and literature, and history courses represent about half of all dual enrollment courses taken. So students can apply these to a wide range of degrees and majors as they transfer to whichever college or university they attend. So as you saw in that first slide, we can celebrate that nearly a third of all public high school students graduates have completed at least one dual enrollment class. Enrollment in advanced courses has been shown in numerous studies to increase college access, affordability, and completion. Yet in Louisiana, there are a large and persistent gaps in participation rates of students of color compared with other students. So in 2018-19, there was a 20 percentage point participation gap between African American students at 22% and their white student peers at 42%. The Hispanic white gap was slightly lower at 18 percentage points. What you can see on the right here is that a significant portion of the racial, and also if you look at it by income, and in these equity gaps, lie in the differential rates of participation among schools that are highly segregated. So schools with high percentages of either economically disadvantaged students or students of color. You see an inverse relationship between the percentage of students of color in the school and the dual enrollment participation rate. High schools with less than 20% of students of color among their graduates had participation rates 24 percentage points lower or higher than those in schools with greater than 80% students of color. We also looked at participation gaps by income status, by parish, regional labor market area, gender, disability status. You can find some of this in the report. As I mentioned at the outset, understanding the data helps us identify opportunities for continued improvement. Career technical dual enrollments are highly concentrated, with over half in just two areas: health professions and precision production, which is largely welding. Opportunities abound to grow dual enrollment in other fields. Fields notable for very minimal enrollment include fields such as education, agriculture, and communications technologies, all of which are industries of importance in Louisiana. Regents records of post-secondary credential completers, as Dr. Brumley mentioned earlier, there's only about 150 students who complete an associate's degree at the same time they complete their high school diploma. There's an additional 534 students who are earning shorter-term post-secondary credentials, either one-year technical certificates, technical diploma, or a short-term technical certificate. About a third of them are in the sort of less than 9 credit hour short-term certificate. Of those earning the 1 year or the full associates, nearly half are from two strong partnerships that I'd like to particularly highlight. South Louisiana Community College's Early College Academy partnership with Lafayette Parish Schools, and the Early College option established between Ascension Parish Schools and River Parish Community College. So those two programs in particular are generating a significant number of the associate degrees currently. You heard earlier the exciting rapid progress that has been made across by partnerships around the state to develop these fast-forward pathways, creating clear roadmaps for students to pursue these advanced credentials. Intentionally deepening dual enrollment partnerships will be necessary to enable significantly more students to obtain these high-value post-secondary credentials and degrees. So I would be remiss if I didn't highlight specific prices that Dr. Reeves began to celebrate the successes in this area. In 7 parishes, you can see on the left, more than half of the 2018-19 graduates took at least one dual enrollment course. And despite overall averages, some schools excel in providing dual enrollment opportunities to students of color. Of students of color graduating in these 15 schools, over 3/4 of them took at least one dual enrollment class. And those of you who are from some of these schools listed out here today, I know Dr. Reed mentioned Lincoln Preparatory, Thrive Academy, Phoenix High School, Fulton High School, I think we maybe have someone from. Please raise your hand, stand to be acknowledged. Thank you very much for joining us today and for all that you do for your students. We look forward to continuing to learn from your successes and hope that others will tap into your knowledge and expertise on how to best scale this work. To wrap up, I want to just kind of give some recommendations that are based upon the findings from this report and the discussions from the dual enrollment task force. Clearly, we need to harness dual enrollment to improve access to college and not exacerbate the persistent racial and income equity gaps in college success. As we saw in this data, this means a concerted and sustained emphasis on building programs at hard-to-serve schools with high percentages of students of color and those from economically disadvantaged families. We need to see much greater intentionality and commitment from all high schools, all school systems, colleges, and universities to harness these programs for the benefit of students of color and low-income households. Increasing numbers of high school students earning the post-secondary credential of value. Again, our analysis showed very few students currently completing these credentials, but the fast-forward pathways as well as recent enhancements to the Jumpstart high school diploma will encourage more students to take sequences of dual enrollment courses on the pathway. And again, expanding and promote dual enrollment career technical substitutes. Louisiana lags behind some leading states that are using dual enrollment to align high school and college and career pathways to accelerate students' attainment of post-secondary credentials in career fields such as Iowa, Indiana, Illinois, and Utah. Although I will say, since someone asked about peer states earlier, we are significantly above both Texas and Florida, for example. And then lastly, continue to expand the transparency of dual enrollment data collection and reporting. As I mentioned at the beginning, this was our first attempt at a comprehensive look. Data sharing between the agencies has improved, partly as a result of this work and other initiatives, and HB 711 that was passed last week will significantly enhance the agency's ability to share data between the two systems while continuing to protect student privacy. And the department has worked with third-party vendors this year so that in the future we'll be able to incorporate ACT, CLEP, AB, and IB exam results in the analysis as well. I thank you for your time and attention. Here to update you about the next steps related to dual enrollment initiatives is William Baker, the Assistant Commissioner for Academic Affairs in Board of Regents.
Thank you, Adam. In addition to the next steps related to these recommendations, I will very briefly, in the interest of time, just give you a few updates on immediate next steps related to dual enrollment and the work of the dual enrollment task force. So the first update, utilizing the feedback that we received from focus groups that we conducted in partnership with Education Trust. We will launch the dual enrollment online portal in August. And so you will be able to use the link ladualenrollment.com as a one-stop shop for information related to dual enrollment that will be related to eligibility, financial aid, things of that nature. So stay tuned for more on the launch of that in August. And then CARES Act funding. The pandemic has really prioritized communication education and bringing learning to students. And so this includes funding for the dual enrollment online portal, and it also includes funding for mobile labs, such as the one you see in this picture here. This is a mobile lab utilized specifically for STEM classes at North Shore Technical Community College. And utilizing CARES Act funding, we really look forward to seeing additional mobile labs in the LCPCS system. We'll also continue the work of the dual enrollment task force, which has been mentioned a few times today. We want to acknowledge and thank Representative Grass for bringing forth legislation in this past session that removed the termination, the ending of that task force, and it will continue to do great work. The scope of the task force has also been expanded to focus on the implementation of increasing dual enrollment access. And so you're all welcome to join us at our next meeting in June, where we're going to really dig into the report. Adam just kind of gave a little bit of spotlights for where we can really talk about the next steps in the work of the dual enrollment task force. And then we also wanted to mention the extension of the interim dual enrollment policy for academic year 2022 to 2023. At the April Board of Regents meeting, the board approved extending that interim policy into 2022-2023. And just to briefly mention, this policy allows for admission into academic courses and on the Master Articulation Matrix if they meet the following criteria: a 2.5 cumulative GPA, and then any of the two options. Option one is any subject-specific minimum score on the assessment policy listed in academic affairs 2.22, and so that includes AccuPlacer, MAP, Aspire, LEAP 2025, ACT, and a few others. Or it also allows for a counselor recommendation based on overall student performance and grade trends in the subject. And so this interim policy has been extended into academic year 2022 and 2023. And we really look forward to the opportunity to analyze the impact of this policy and in future dual enrollment annual reports as we continue to really build on the momentum of this work with the dual enrollment task force as well as the fast forward pathways. And so at this time, I will trade my chair back to Commissioner Dr. Reed for any kind of questions related, but we always like to mention if you have any specific feedback afterwards, dual enrollment at LA-Regents.de.
Dr. Reed.
Thank you so much for the presentation. As you see, we have some things to celebrate and some significant work to do to close gaps and make sure that opportunity exists for everyone in our state. And so with that, we just really appreciate the opportunity to share with you the state of where we are, and we encourage you to review the report, to challenge us as we're challenging ourselves to use the report to make it actionable, to improve the flight of opportunities for our students in our state. Certainly want to thank Representative Brass for being a tremendous champion, but all of you for being champions for Louisiana students, for encouraging us to innovate, educate, and collaborate and scale so that we have more opportunities in Louisiana. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Anyone else at the table? Thank you. Questions from Regents? BESE?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If a student is taking at some schools, they're taking AP courses, you know, the quote-unquote smart students, are those configured into our dual enrollment numbers and goals? Students that are taking those courses at those schools where they say, you know, we didn't have dual enrollment, we were told to take AP courses to get college credit. Or is that a fact? And also, are those students that are taking AP courses, are those configured into our overall goals of success?
So yes, they're configured into the overall goals of success. The joint goal adopted by these two boards is that every student should graduate high school with college credit and post-secondary credential at value or both. That has been defined to include success in the dual enrollment class as well as success on an AP exam. In the majority of courses, students are doing either dual enrollment or advanced placement, right?
course can be designated as both. The numbers show that there's very few of those across the state. There's only a handful of courses that are sort of blending the AP and dual enrollment experience. But yes, as a measure of success, and we did look at students who took either a dual enrollment class or an AP class or one of each, or at least one of each in the high school graduate analysis.
And I would just add that to one point of your question about students who don't have dual enrollment. I think the portal will help significantly with that, so that there's one place to see what are all the dual enrollment offerings in the state of Louisiana. And I think that will help us to expand, because there are many institutions that have online dual enrollment. You have mobile labs that will now drive up to the high school to do career technical ed work, and so we do want to expand opportunities. We think those will help.
Any other member? I'm sorry, yes. Mr. Morris.
Because I had two questions. I was curious about best practices with regard to communication with parents and how we make parents aware of these opportunities so that they can, if there are children involved. And the second question was, when I visit schools in my district and hear that there's just not enough counselors out there in the BESE case, and when we start presenting these different opportunities and whatnot, we obviously need counselors to be able to articulate the different pathways and engage students individually. So I was interested in best practices from other peer states with regard to how you market this, with regard to engaging parents. And secondly, how you address the concern about human resources for having enough counselors.
So on the parental piece, I will say that I know our partner education trust is in the room. We have been very intentional about doing parental focus groups around dual enrollment. The portal will have testimonies and videos so that you can hear from other parents and students around why dual enrollment matters and why it works. So we're very appreciative of their work to make sure that we are intentional in developing the kinds of messaging that will resonate with various communities across our state. We will also test the utility of the portal with various communities across our state to make sure the message is on point and it is persuasive and helpful. So I would say that. The counselor assistance, I would say we have a phenomenal counselor on our dual enrollment task force. She has talked about what she needs in terms of assistance with the portal, where people can receive information, where students or parents could apply for dual enrollment courses, so they're not keying in 200 applications for dual enrollment. So we're working to make sure that the portal has the kind of utility that helps counselors to have a point of reference for individuals to learn more, but also helps to make the work easier of getting students into dual enrollment.
So if I'm a parent that's interested, I'll be going directly to the portal, or the counselor at my school will be going to the portal?
It should be both, and we also recognize that we had a broadband presentation, right? Not everybody has internet. So we also are trying to make sure we have some other options for individuals who do not have immediate access to go on to the portal.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. We have Regent Steels.
Commissioner, I offer this as a comment and as a challenge to the staff, and specifically not as a question that needs to be answered. I know in looking at the institutions in Louisiana, the colleges that participate in this program, that Southeastern leads the pack with 3,705 students enrolled, and North Shore Technical with 1,762. I'm aware of a very high degree of cross-collaboration between those two institutions that has been going on a good long time before the rest of us had as much attention drawn to dual enrollment as they have. So the comment for the staff's consideration at another time is, how is it in the exotic spreadsheet by which allocations are made to universities of state revenue, is it recognized when universities put that much attention on something that earns them nothing particular in terms of credits? How is it that we are rewarding and reinforcing that effort on the part of institutions when it comes to the question of allocating resources? So, just a comment, not a question.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Fiscal check. I was just going to add Mr. Morris's comment. The launch of, I'm on the dual enrollment task force as well. And part of the issue with communication with parents and the frustrations of our counselors had to do with such a divergence and wide variety of different application forms, different information from different community colleges and four-year institutions. And as a counselor, it was very difficult to marshal all that information together and counsel with students and present to parents when there was so much to do and put together. So this portal or this website that we got together under the leadership of the people you see sitting on these tables right here is going to make and is beginning to make a tremendous impact with communication that flows not only to parents but to our counselors as well. And it streamlines the work that some of the counselors have to do as they help students gain access to the appropriate courses that they need. So we're very excited about the launch of this particular website and the collaboration that we're now seeing with our counselors and the additions of people at the different 2- and 4-year institutions. So I think we're going to see how much this is going to increase enrollment. It'll be more of an ease of transition for students and parents, and to be perfectly honest, for our counselors as well. So I think this is going to bear tremendous fruit. And while I have the floor, and I know that Dr. Crumley and Dr. Reed have just working tremendously together in this collaborative effort. But I do want to give a shout out to Mr. Bradford, who's sitting right here, who has been a tremendous partner in providing all of the data and working very closely and being tremendous liaison between local institutions. So,
Very well said. Thank you, Ms. Bocek. Appreciate it. Any other board, BESE, Regents? Yes, sir.
Again, great work, everyone on this. I think that this is awesome. But I do have one suggestion in this communication piece. I think that whenever we look at the overall spectrum on how we're communicating this to students, I think that it's best that we would actually take some students who are actually doing the dual enrollment and are in college, taking those specific students and even some that didn't do dual enrollment and just going to the schools that are doing the dual enrollment and telling them and saying, hey, I think it's best that you do utilize this particular program solely because you will have so much different access, you will have the experience, and you'll be able to actually be where you want to be and see where you want to go at an early age. So I think that this is awesome again, but I do think that that particular part on how to communicate to students is, probably one of the best things to do, only because they're speaking to their peers and they're actually getting to know them, and actually that's another recruitment piece for our institutions as well. So I think you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone right there, so I think that would be awesome to do moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other from the table? Dr. Bowman, all good? Thank you so much. We do have a green cord for someone who would like to speak and give information only for. Thank you, leaders. Appreciate it. Please identify yourself and your agency.
Gordon Ford, Executive Director of Lincoln Preparatory School. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Madam President, Mr. Chairman, for being here today. I want to thank the Board of Regents as well as BESE, our authorizer, for the invitation to attend today on behalf of Lincoln Preparatory School. Oh, I'm sorry. Gordon Ford, Executive Director of Lincoln Preparatory School in Grambling, Louisiana. Madam President, Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I want to thank the Board of Regents as well as BESE, our authorizer, for the invitation to attend today on behalf of Lincoln Preparatory School, where 100% of our students participate in dual enrollment and nearly 25% of our 2021 graduating class earned an associate degree. I also thank Dr. Bromley, Dr. Hunter Reed, and their teams for their work in this domain and emphasis on post-secondary readiness. We would not be recognized here today without the amazing work of our team, especially our Chief Academic Officer, Melanie Colvin, our school counselor, Ms. Stephanie Melton, and our dual enrollment coordinator, Ms. Francesca Jones, along with our amazing students at Lincoln Prep. Lincoln Prep is a school that is 85% economically disadvantaged and 92% students of color. However, we were more than double the state average in earning post-secondary credentials for those subgroups of students, and 73% of our students enrolled in college in the last full year of accountability. In order to have that kind of success with at-risk subgroups, there are a few things that are critical. First, we must have a commitment to equity. It cannot be okay for schools and systems to provide post-secondary credentials to 42% or more of affluent or white students and only 20% to economically disadvantaged students and students of color. We must have a commitment to excellence. Students cannot be allowed to fall victim to what former President Bush called the soft bigotry of low expectations. We must challenge them every single day and not allow them to take the easy way out. We must have a commitment to breaking down barriers. Every time I hear someone call the ACT test a gatekeeper, I ask them who they're slamming the gate on and who's being kept out. In a state where 74% of the students are economically disadvantaged and 52% are students of color, it is unconscionable that we allow a test that is known to be biased against those subgroups to control not only who gets into college, but who gets state aid for college. While we are working to increase ACT scores, we must also be committed to using every tool in our arsenal to get kids into college courses regardless of their ACT score, and hopefully one day do something about the 7,000 otherwise eligible students that graduate in Louisiana and cannot access TOPS because of their ACT score. Finally, we must be committed to expand our comfort zones. In the past 5 years, Lincoln Preparatory School students have earned dual enrollment credits from Grambling State University, Southern University of Shreveport, Louisiana Tech University, Northwestern State University, and Louisiana Delta Community College. High school administrators must be willing to forge partnerships beyond their usual dual enrollment providers if they are truly committed to making gains with at-risk subgroups. This would include partnerships with more of our community colleges and our HBCUs. Again, thank you so much for the invitation to attend today, which I'm proud to accept on behalf of the Grambling High Foundation, the faculty, staff, students, and families of Lincoln Preparatory School.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
You're welcome.
Very well said. Thank you. Anyone else? And without any objection, motion carries. And would you like to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Only if you back the gavel.
Thank you, everyone.
Elaine, if I shake you.